Good morning, everybody, and my thanks to all of you and to Dr. Lunan for inviting me to speak at this conference. And let me start by offering you my personal welcome to the city of Glasgow. It's now my home city, and I don't think you could have picked a better place to meet. I've been Cabinet Secretary for Health and Sport since early July, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to welcome general practitioners from across the UK to Scotland. I want to express my thanks to all of you, but especially to Scotland's GPs and their teams for the incredible and vital work you do in every community every day, and to make clear my absolute commitment to see general practice in Scotland flourish. I want to use our time together today to continue a conversation with the profession here in Scotland. I want to set out now a foundation for that conversation, a foundation of shared values, which I believe is distinctive. Our approach in Scotland is to listen to GPs. Now, I don't need to tell you that GPs are a diverse group, and so not every view will be accommodated, and we won't always agree. But our approach to the sustainability challenges faced by general practice and to shaping the future of general practice through the new GP contract, now a distinct contract for Scotland, has been through close engagement and dialogue with the profession. And we start from undisputed common ground. Our fundamental shared aim is to provide the very best care for the people of this country. The role of the college in shaping how we deliver that aim is fundamental. We start not with contracts or initiatives, but with values, with the abiding values of general practice. Humane generalist care, available when all need it. Care for the whole person, mind and body, throughout our whole life. Continuity of care, teams embedded in communities, forming relationships with people, to ensure their needs are understood. These are fundamental values, too often taken for granted, and indeed in other jurisdictions and new models of commissioning or delivery, they are being stretched to breaking point. Not in Scotland. We are fully committed to the values of general practice, and as the new Cabinet Secretary for Health in Scotland, I think it is important that you hear me say this. Before I go on to talk about how we are delivering these values together, I want to say something which I feel is critical in terms of Scotland's distinctive position in the United Kingdom. It won't be a surprise to you that I believe Scotland is the best place in the UK to be a GP. Of course, I recognise the challenges faced by general practice here in Scotland. That's why we simply cannot afford to make being a GP even more difficult. But I believe that Brexit does just that. What we have is uncertainty and anxiety at a time when we need confidence. That is why last week I wrote to all health boards in Scotland to emphasise that all EU citizens working in the Scottish NHS are welcome. All EU citizens. So to GPs and their staff here in Scotland, if you're an EU citizen and you have chosen to make your life in Scotland, you have paid us that compliment, and you're working in general practice, you're welcome, your contribution is valued, and we want you to stay. Over the years, the College has set the context for many of the most important conversations about general practice. We saw this influence in the decision announced at this conference 3 years ago to end the overly bureaucratic Quality and Outcomes Framework, the QOF, here in Scotland. And it set the context for the new GP contract, which came into effect on the 1st of April this year. In 2009, it was the British Journal of General Practice that the former chair of RCGP Scotland, John Gillies and colleagues, argued that contracts should be used to enable rather than limit developments in general practice. That fed directly through into the development of the new GP contract, a contract that is just such an enabling one. It delivers the values of general practice I believe we share, the 4 C's of primary care: contact, comprehensiveness, continuity, coordination. Values to provide care that is person, not disease-centred. We're aiming to focus the role of GPs to allow you to be the expert medical generalists, the clinical leaders in your communities that you train to be. Scotland's population needs our GPs to be focused on dealing with people who are ill but unsure why. The increasing complex care in the community, not just the frail elderly, but the more complex challenges around, for example, mental health, and demonstrating the whole system quality improvement and clinical leadership that we need. That means being part of a more integrated, multidisciplinary team. And I believe in focusing the role in that way and removing from the contractual arrangements as many activities as possible that GPs do not need to do, we will make the profession more attractive. Of course, the role of expert medical generalist is not new. It is what GPs have aspired to be recognised as for many years. But much gets in the way of you being that expert medical generalist: the workload, the risks, the support that is available. To support the distinctive direction of travel in Scotland, the Scottish Government has committed to invest an additional £500 million each year in primary care by the end of this Parliament, £250 million of which is in direct support of general practice. That includes an investment of £110 million this year in the contract and wider transformation to begin to build the wider team capacity and ensure GPs can spend more time with patients when they really need to see them. As well as building the multidisciplinary team, we have continued to increase the number of GPs working in Scotland by at least 800 over the next decade, and reducing the risk that GPs face in terms of premises and employment. Our new £30 million premises sustainability loan scheme will open for applications in the coming weeks. Now, phase 1 of the new GP contract has begun. The 31 health and social care partnerships have each worked hand in hand with their local GPs to produce primary care improvement plans. There are significant challenges ahead, we know that, but I want to highlight the way that we have ensured that local GPs through LMCs, GP subcommittees and clusters are fully involved in decision making. This is about working together. It is about trust. Engaging with and learning with GPs and their teams, those at the front line of general practice, will ensure that their expertise is recognised, is used, and is listened to in the developments of these services. I want all of us to engage in this process so that we deliver services that truly meet the needs of the community that you serve. Our contract recognises the importance of partnership in the widest sense too, by requiring there to be full engagement with people, their families and their carers, with the third sector and the wider communities. The National Workforce Plan on Primary Care, published earlier this year, sets out a comprehensive strategy of how we will increase the GP workforce and the other health professionals that will make up the multidisciplinary teams at the heart of our community health service. We continue to work on these plans, and I expect a further, more fully integrated plan by the end of this year. I understand how critical workforce supply and development is, and I can assure you that I am taking a very close personal interest in ensuring that we meet our workforce commitments. I said earlier that we will increase the number of GPs working in Scotland to address increasing demand, with at least 800 recruited over the next decade. In the 5 years between 2015-16 and 2020-21, the Scottish Government will have increased the number of medical places in Scottish universities to a record 1,038, a rise of 22%. We've announced 85 new undergraduate places focused on general practice, shared between the universities of Aberdeen, Glasgow and Edinburgh. And yesterday I had the privilege to launch our new ScotGem programme, a programme for graduate entry into 4 years medical training, focused on GP practice, focused on our remote and rural communities, and run in a shared manner by the universities of Aberdeen and of Dundee and St Andrews, and with the support of the University of the Highlands and Islands. A major initiative with 55 new enthusiastic students, all beginning a clinical practice in their communities, focused on being agents of change, on active casework in their training, and on real-life situations. And with our widening access work across government and further and higher education, I'm determined that we will continue to widen access to the profession. Medicine and general practice, probably in particular, cannot be restricted to the privileged few. But I know that if we are to attract people into the profession, it's not just a numbers game. The culture of our educational institutions and within the medical profession as a whole has to change. Being a GP is not just one of the most rewarding medical careers, it is one of the most valuable, important careers. We need to stop talking down a career in general practice. You are never just a GP. That negative talk impacts not just on those we seek to recruit, but also stops us retaining people in the profession. That is why we're putting in place a comprehensive package of retention measures, including coaching and mentoring schemes to support GPs, helping combat workload pressures and retain them in the workforce. We're investing £7.5 million in this year to recruit and retrain GPs. And our investment also includes a marketing campaign supported by a recruitment agency that will seek to bring fully qualified GPs into Scotland from across the UK and overseas. I believe that we can be more successful with this in Scotland than in other jurisdictions because of our commitment to those shared values, our work to put those words into practice in a way that makes a difference, and the clear signal we are sending that we welcome qualified people from the European Union and elsewhere. And we're making things easier for highly qualified GPs to join the Scottish workforce. Just over a year ago, the Scottish Government commissioned the NHS National Services Scotland to develop a national GP recruitment website. NSS has worked extensively and in partnership with the Scottish Rural Medicine Collaborative to provide a fully managed service, ensuring that information is relevant and up to date. This valuable new resource will provide a one-stop shop for all things GP related, making the whole business of linking GPs to available opportunities so much easier than in the past. So I'm pleased to announce today the official launch of gpjobs.scot at this conference. You can see the website for yourself and find out more about working as a GP in Scotland by visiting both the Scottish Rural Medicine Collaborative and the Scottish Government at their stands in the exhibition hall. And all applications, I assure you, are very welcome. The long-term sustainability of Scotland's health and social care system and the flourishing of the GP profession will require every part of the system to evolve. Through the removal of QOF and the new GP contract, we have shown that we have a completely different approach and that that is possible in Scotland. An approach built on the values of generalism, one that values GPs and wants to support them in their core professional responsibilities and seeks to remove barriers and risks wherever possible. We cannot allow ourselves to be distracted by short-term commercial solutions that undermine our abiding commitment to the establishing principle of our National Health Service. The College have a critical role in helping shape the professional future of general practice in Scotland, and I am keen to hear what you have to say, whether that is on the future of clusters, the use of data to drive improvement, support for the interfaces of care where often inefficiency is at its greatest. I will listen to the ideas of our GPs. Clinical practice is changing, and it is now more appropriate to see a wider range of professionals to support you with long-term and other conditions. But let me be clear, the GP must remain the clinical leader of the whole team, and we must guard against fragmentation of care. But a combination of increasing demand and enhanced skills, such as independent prescribing from more professionals, means our clinical models have to change. Public expectation needs to change with it. That is why care and support planning and initiatives like Scotland's House of Care are so important. And I welcome the role of the College in this. And it is important to recognise that general practice is not a 9-to-5 business. So I'm extremely grateful to those GPs who dedicate their time to working out of hours. Whatever the contractual arrangements, working out of hours to provide generalist care must continue to be recognised as part of the core skill set of GPs. And I understand that a national event for out-of-hours GPs and other practitioners is being held in November to discuss the achievements and the challenges faced by the service, and I very much look forward to hearing about that event and its outcomes. Although workforce is perhaps the most obvious enabler of change, there is a wider context. This includes how services are planned, commissioned and delivered. Last week, I signed a joint letter with COSLA, our Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, and other key partners to restate our commitment to the integration of health and social care. This is one of the most significant reforms since the establishment of the NHS. It is about ensuring that those who use services get the right care and support, whatever their needs, at any point in their care journey. With a greater emphasis on community-based and more joined-up anticipatory and preventative care, integration aims to improve care and support for those who use health and social care services and equips our services for the challenges that the future will bring. Integration authorities manage more than £8.7 billion worth of resources that NHS boards and local authorities managed previously. Integrated arrangements have been put in place for over 2 years now, and we're seeing some progress across Scotland. But in some areas, the progress is greater than in others. In last week's joint letter, both the Scottish Government and COSLA said that the pace and urgency of reform needs to increase. I believe that will bring a much better and a more joined-up focus to our community health services. Included within that significant agenda that they have is our work to develop better mental health services and reform the public health. And of course, it is critical to the interfaces with secondary and social care. GPs are essential to that local planning and delivery of community health services, whether in urban or rural settings, in deprived or more affluent areas with a predominantly young or a more elderly population. The joint work done between integration authorities and local GPs on primary care improvement plans confirms that we were right to require collaboration and demonstrates that we take seriously the clinical leadership of GPs locally, regionally and nationally. So I look forward to engaging with Carrie and her colleagues in the RCGP Scotland as the national reform agenda develops. I'm grateful to the RCGP in Scotland for its collective leadership over the last few years. We have not always agreed, but we have listened to each other and we have established a positive and constructive relationship. That is the kind of relationship I want with the College in Scotland. Open, honest dialogue that is challenging when it needs to be, but is ultimately constructive, pulling together for the sake of general practice in Scotland and ultimately for the people of Scotland. Given that so much of what we think of as healthcare is delivered day in, day out by Scotland's GPs and their excellent teams, it goes without saying that general practice is far too important to be allowed ever to decline. So let me end by saying, without hesitation, that I share the values of the College and all of Scotland's GPs, and I want general practice in Scotland to flourish. I firmly believe we have set out a distinctive course that we can see Scotland be the best place, not just in the UK, but in the world, to be a GP. And in the months and the years ahead, I want to work with you and the college here in Scotland to make that happen. Thank you.